Good evening and welcome to the Daily Report. It is the 17th day of July. Happy Hump Day. Today we tell you all the stories that are making headlines tonight, and later on we will be having a conversation on auditing. We're going to be doing all the math. We have Engineer Shama Kiteme, the president of IEK, and we will be having a CPA as well. But for now, let's take a look at the highlights. Tonight, President William Ruto is at a crossroad on his anticipated broad-based cabinet, expected to be unveiled this week, following mounting pressure from Gen Z and his allies. Also tonight, veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho was on Wednesday arrested and released, a day after a Nakuru-based journalist was shot while covering the nationwide protests, begging the question, does freedom of the press still exist in this country?
The incident which involved police officers is not only an attack on an individual, but a direct assault on press freedom and safety of journalists in Nakuru County.
And a fresh move to impeach Meru County Governor Kawira Mwangaza has kick-started at the Meru County Assembly.
Correspondence relating to the broadened workforce in the county governor's office, copies of which are produced on pages 260.
Welcome once again to this live broadcast. My name is Hibaq Said. On sign language interpretation tonight is Catherine Simaloi. To start us off, police in Siaya County have started investigations into the death of Siaya High Court presiding judge Daniel Ogembo, who was found dead inside his residential house on Wednesday. Judge Daniel Ogola Ogembo, who was the lead judge at Siaya Law Courts, was reportedly found dead at his home in Siaya early this morning. Police officials have hinted that his driver informed them he had complained of feeling unwell on Tuesday before going to bed. And as Ruga Eval now reports, this is the third blow to the judiciary in Kenya, as they have lost 3 judges in less than 30 days.
Once again, a cloud of sadness has descended upon the judiciary and the Judicial Service Commission. Today, colleagues, family and friends are grappling with the shocking death of Judge Daniel Ogola Ogembo. The sun rose as usual, and as it is custom, his chauffeur went to pick him up at sunrise. Today, Judge Ogembo was unavailable for comment. Judge Ogembo's body was discovered at his residence. However, the cause of his death remains undetermined. Confirming this, the county police commander Cleti Kimayo revealing that they had tried calling him several times before deciding to break down his door. County Governor James Orengo was among the first to mourn the well-liked judge, describing him as, and I quote, Justice Ogembo had a marvelous ability to listen intently, reflect quietly, and then interject, usually with a brief few words that brought clarity in the courtroom. May his soul rest in eternal peace. In the same breath, her Lady Chief Justice also took to her podium to mourn the High Court judge, and I quote, on behalf of the Judiciary and the Judicial Service Commission, it is with profound sadness that I announce the sudden passing of Honorable Justice Daniel Ogembo Ogola, Judge of the High Court of Kenya, end of quote. The death of Judge Ogembo marks the third loss among officials of the judiciary in the past 1 month. Others include High Court Judge David Majanja, who passed away while undergoing a surgery, and Chief Magistrate Monica Kivuti, who was shot and killed at the Makadara Law Court.
Where is set precedent that is not only being followed by the courts, but also by the universities and the law school. Justice Majanja was a diligent and hard-working judge.
Bome made these remarks while paying final respects to Judge David Majanja at the Friends International Center Church on Ngong Road, Nairobi County. Ruga Eval, TV47.
Thank you, Ruga. Once again tonight, journalists have been caught in the eye of the storm after rowdy youth disrupted a meeting at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Foundation. The Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance was holding a party group meeting and invited the media for a press conference. The event featuring a fallout and later fracas causing harm to journalists. George Maringa reports.
Wednesday afternoon. Initially, the invitation had indicated that ODM was to hold a PG/NEC meeting at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Foundation offices in Upper Hill, Nairobi. A press conference was to be held at 1 p.m. Shortly afterwards, the media was alerted that there was going to be another PG meeting for the entire Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition at 2:30 p.m. and a media statement would be issued at 4 p.m. And for 2 hours, things reportedly got heated at the Azimio meeting. Reports further indicate that the higher temperatures led to the Nairobi Senator and ODM Secretary General storming out of the said closed-door meeting. It is alleged that the Azimio members could not agree on the proposed dialogue by President William Ruto. Further reports indicate that Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka was agreeable with 6 issues raised by Gen Z. And when the leaders emerged for a press conference, ODM leader Raila Odinga was missing. It was Kalonzo Musyoka who read the statement, but his address was short-lived.
Who were maimed, injured, and who had their properties destroyed during the demonstration.
A few minutes later, things changed. This group of rowdy youth descended on the venue of the press conference, causing chaos as they chanted, heading towards the journalists who were recording the press conference. Journalists caught in the melee had to scamper for safety, with a handful escaping with injuries. The latest events once again bringing to the fore the unwarranted attacks on journalists in their work. Let it be remembered, in the words of English author Edward Bulwer Lytton in 1839, the pen is mightier than the sword. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, George Maringa, and there will be consequences. Moving on, the Chief Justice Martha Koome mourned the fallen Gen Zs who lost their lives during the ongoing anti-government protests. Speaking at the Friends International Center in Nairobi County at a requiem mass for the late Judge David Majanja. Nevertheless, the Chief Justice said that the fallen Generation Z perished while defending their democratic rights, and he urged the judiciary to remain vigilant in upholding the rule of law.
Justice Majanja gave back wholeheartedly. He was a mentor and a provider to many. By emulating his example, all we can do is all of us become the defenders of the law and the providers of our own communities. He has left us at a difficult time as a nation, when we are mourning also our children who have died in the quest of expressing their rights as founded in the Constitution. But as this was going on, we kept on urging that we, the judiciary, must stand as the beacon of the defense of the rule of law and the administration of justice. So we will honor Justice Majanja by standing as the last bastion of the defense of the rule of law, the defense of the vulnerable.
Now, the relationship between the political class and the media has always been a delicate one. However, recent events in Parliament have caused even this delicate balance to become unstable, with parliamentary journalists expressing concern over what they call as antagonistic treatment from the legislators, with some journalists going as far as to accuse the legislators of attempting to gag the press. This situation has forced Speaker Moses Wetangula to meet the Kenya Union of Journalists to clear the air.
Media coverage of Parliament has been a tough job in recent days, with tensions rising between the legislators and the press, turning what is usually a balanced love-hate relationship sour. For almost 1 month now, journalists have had to strain for them to access information from Parliament and even operate within the Parliament precincts. This move is seen as an effort to gag the media at a time when credible information is in high demand.
Under Article 118, Article 34 and 35, right to freedom of information and media, we should not, even at any given time, Mr. Speaker, block or deny access to media the way it has been done, Mr. Speaker. We should look access of media to the floor and to Parliament prisons case by case, Mr. Speaker, because I'm told there is a silent gag order that has been issued against access of media.
A few days ago, while Senator Edwin Sifuna was appearing before a parliamentary committee at the county hall, journalists were denied entrance until a few minutes later after an intervention was made. This directive forced Speaker Moses Wetangula and the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission to convene a crisis meeting with the Media Council of Kenya, Editors Guild, Kenya Union of Journalists, and the Kenya Parliamentary Journalists Association. Kenya Parliamentary Journalists Association quoted that Wetangula informed the meeting that no journalists had been barred from covering Parliament, clarifying that while access to main Parliament building is restricted, it is merely owing to the extensive damage sustained during the protest. As we speak, a media center, a place where journalists convene and carry out press briefings, is being used to store Parliament's damaged items until the insurance firm completes assessment processes. Once this process is done, journalists will have to go back there. However, there is no specific timelines on when the assessment will end. Meanwhile, a temporary media center has been set up at a building hundreds of meters away outside the main building of Parliament. Paul Kirobi, TV47, Nairobi.
And the siege against the Fourth Estate continues. Veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho was on Wednesday arrested and released after the DCI said it was a case of mistaken identity. And as Elizabeth Atieno now reports, this comes a day after a Nakuru-based journalist was shot while covering the nationwide protests, which begs the question on whether freedom of the press still exists in the country.
On Tuesday, Nakuru-based journalist Catherine Wanjeri was fighting for her life. Wednesday, veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho was running for his life. Is this going to be the life of journalists from now henceforth? Journalists whose only weapon are cameras and microphones?
These are emblems of sanctity. In international humanitarian law, you respect the Red Cross, true or false?
True.
You respect the Red Crescent, true or false? True. Why don't you respect this?
This is the question lingering in the minds of members of the Fourth Estate, a situation exacerbated by today's incident where veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho, in the company of his son, were trailed while leaving their current home and later bundled into a waiting unmarked probox. A short video shows 3 uniformed police officers and others in civilian clothing roughing him up and pushing him inside the car.
I came with them. I was still handcuffed in the car. We stopped here, just across the road here near the Shell petrol station. That is the time they asked for my ID, and I gave it to them.
A few hours later, the National Police Service released a statement saying it was a case of mistaken identity as they were after blogger Francis Gaitho, a statement that does not sit well with many Kenyans.
They did not explain how they could have trailed me right from my home or near my home, if it was indeed the case of mistaken identity.
In a bid to fight for freedom of the press, journalists from Nakuru and Kiambu counties on Wednesday held peaceful protests to condemn the shooting of Kameme TV journalist Catherine Wanjeri, who was shot by police officers while covering the Tuesday demos.
It is important that the officer in question be held accountable for his action to ensure justice for Ms. Wanjeri and to set a precedent that such conduct by law enforcement officers will not be tolerated.
It happened yesterday for us. It was that is quite an unfortunate incident.
The Kenya Union of Journalists and the Kenya Editors Guild have strongly condemned the recent attacks on journalists, even as members of the Fourth Estate plan to hold nationwide demonstrations on Wednesday next week.
This has always been the trend. Last year we saw that when we are having a similar protest and journalists were targeted by the police. And we are concerned that no action was taken because even the police officer who was doing all this actually is known.
The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, has now commenced investigations to bring the rogue police officers to book.
And I'm sure we shall be able to make very good and quick progress in this matter.
For now, journalists in the country demand to know why they are being targeted for fulfilling their duty, which is to report the truth. Elizabeth Atieno, TV47.
Quite astute. Thank you, Elizabeth. A fresh move to impeach Meru County Governor Kawira Mwangaza has kick-started at the Meru County Assembly on Wednesday morning. John Java Kiania tells us more about the motion presented today by the Deputy of the Majority, Zipporah Kenya, to warn the governor to be removed from office.
The governor of Meru Kawira Mwangaza is in hot soup once again after the motion to remove her from office was presented today at the Meru County Assembly. The notice of motion was presented by the deputy leader of the majority, Zipporah Kenya, citing abuse of office and gross mismanagement and misuse of county resources. In her argument, Kenya criticized the governor for failing to appoint the chairpersons of various boards, including the Revenue Board and the Meru Microfinance Corporation. Governor Kawira is also accused of revoking the appointment of Virginia Meriti without the support of the majority of the representatives of the Meru MCAs. Mwangaza is also alleged to have paid emergency co-allowances to 161 doctors, using incorrect rates, resulting to an additional payment of 74.3 million shillings. She is also accused of using manual payroll to pay workers' salaries, totaling to 102.94 million shillings, which is 3.1% of the cost of workers' income, thus contradicting the county's financial management laws.
Employing a broadened workforce of at least 111 personal staff in the office of the governor, thus contributing to an increase in wage bill by more than 500 million and an excessive wage bill that is 49% of the annual revenue allocation, far beyond the 35% limit that is set by Section 25(1)(a) and B of the Public Finance Management Act.
Raundi hii tumehakikisha kwamba zile kaunti ambazo zote tumeleta kuna evidence kuonyesha kwamba ni gavana yeye mwenyewe alikuwa directly involved. Hiyo ndo tofauti ya zile motions ambazo tulileta last time na motion ya sasa.
Governor Mwangaza has twice survived being impeached from office. This third impeachment attempt presented a tough obstacle in her political career. John Javakiania, TV47.
Thank you, Kiania. Away from the embattled governor tonight, President William Ruto is at a crossroad on his anticipated broad-based cabinet, expected to be unveiled this week following mounting pressure from his allies, Gen Zs and the opposition. A section of the president's allies want him to reinstate the best-performing cabinet secretaries, while analysts warn the move will attract a backlash. TV47's Apollo Kamau reports on why President Ruto's further delay in naming the cabinet is likely to attract legal action.
As the nation waits with bated breath on President William Ruto's broad-based cabinet, expected to be unveiled in the course of the week, President Ruto, despite facing the dilemma of giving Kenyans an acceptable cabinet that meets political, regional and gender interests, as well as Gen Z demands, could be taken to court if it takes too long to name his new cabinet, despite the law being silent on timelines.
First of all, he should abandon the idea of national unity, broad-based government, if that means bringing Raila on board. That he should avoid. You must abandon the path that previous presidents have followed in picking their cabinets, which is loyalists, friends, relatives, tribesmen. That must be abandoned for today, because you are addressing a challenge. So it's not just a question of forming cabinet. It's a question of addressing the challenges that include perceptions that people think this country is going the wrong direction.
Cabinet has roles that have been provided in the Constitution to assist with accountability and collective decision-making as a senior organ of the executive. So we can't say it's 1 week, it's 10 days or something like that, but it has to be a reasonable period. If it becomes too long, then someone can actually challenge the failure of the president to nominate cabinet secretaries in court and will probably get an order directing the president to appoint a cabinet within a reasonable period.
Pressure is mounting on the president from his allies to reinstate a section of the sacked cabinet secretaries due to institutional memory, but analysts warn the move will attract a backlash, saying the president should appoint a new cabinet made up of technocrats minus politicians.
Look at Duale. Duale, for your information, is a politician, but you have never seen him doing politics. He has been concentrating in the duty which has been given. The likes of Chirchir, the energy minister. Chirchir is somebody who is very keen in what he's doing. I believe the president is going to look into that. He picks up maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so, and bring the experts of those people who have not been doing politics and running around. We have the likes of Kindiki. Kindiki has been performing very well, and we see, I don't want to say he comes from, he's a Kenyan, and he has been doing very good work. You see the likes of Owalo. Owalo has been pushing us to build our ICT centers in our constituencies.
During times like this, it's like sort of shock therapy. You are telling people you understand there is a problem. And that shake-up is part of sorting out that problem. And in our situation today, returning 1 or 2 people is synonymous with returning all of them. So it's like it erases all the good.
I would really be surprised if none of the 22 cabinet secretaries comes back. I would be surprised. In fact, I think it would even be imprudent for the president not to reinstate some of them, because continuity and even good governance, whether it is corporate governance or otherwise, always requires to have a few people who can continue for purpose of experience as new blood is coming in.
The broad-based government push co-opting Azimio leader Raila Odinga into the coming unity government has already split the Azimio coalition, a move likely to trigger a by-election at a time the IEBC is yet to be reconstituted. A fallout on the new cabinet appointments will also put Parliament on the spot, as protesters might disrupt the vetting process, putting MPs under pressure given the historic invasion of Parliament by Gen Zs. Apol Kamau, TV47.
Thank you, Apollo. Traders and business people in Kitengela are counting losses following yesterday's protests across the country. The traders, who now want the government to ensure the security of their businesses, are saying that hooligans masquerading as protesters caused a lot of theft and damage to their shops. They want the protesters to maintain peace even as they fight for good governance.
50 million hivi. Hiyo stock ilikuwa ya 50 million hivi.
The aftermath of yesterday's demos in Kitengela town, property worth millions of shillings was looted and destroyed, all because of hooligans masquerading as protesters. Willie Ruto, a washman at a liquor store, recalls how the hooligans accessed the shop and made away with loads of liquor.
Watu walikuwa wanaingia kwa fujo, wanachukua pombe yenye wanataka kwa sababu ilikuwa ile hali ya kusita wangepatikana na polisi wangeuawa.
Traders like Jacinta Nduta are counting huge losses, leading her to conclude that these are no longer protests but rather they're acts of hooliganism.
Mimi hii si maandamano. Sasa hii ni ukola na kuharibia watu kazi.
Christian Duto, a manager at one of the shops that fell victim to the hooligans, now wants government to caution them from such losses in the near future.
Tunaomba kama wakati mwingine kutakuwa na maandamano, kama serikali yetu inaweza tupea ulinzi hapa nje.
Eliud Mwangi, a bodaboda rider and resident, has urged the protesters not to lose focus of their goal by projecting their anger on innocent people.
Wenye wanakuja hapa kama sisi wakaaji, mkikuja kuandamana si kuharibu mali yetu. Sisi si Ruto, angalieni Ruto lakini si kuharibu biashara zetu.
The protest that entered week 4 caused losses to some businesses, with protesters in some regions lynching with those who infiltrate their peaceful protest. Vera Alberta, TV47.
Thank you, Vera. Veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho's forceful abduction and release by police officers Wednesday morning has raised questions both on and offline, bringing attention to reality of what has happened against innocent Kenyans in the last 1 month at the hands of law enforcers. Although National Police Service later clarified that they had mistaken Macharia Gaitho for a blogger named Francis Gaitho, abduction with intent to confine is a crime as encapsulated, in Section 259 of the Penal Code.
The rise in cases of abductions by police officers against innocent Kenyans has caused jitters amongst concerned Kenyans, demanding to know why President William Ruto's government has been violating protesters' rights since the beginning of anti-finance bill demos. Since he dismissed the entire cabinet with immediate effect, the head of state is seen to have also pressed a reset button, overlooking Generation Z demands that also led to withdrawal of Finance Bill of 2024. Wednesday morning, veteran journalist Macharia Gaitho was abducted outside a police station in what the National Police Service termed as a case of mistaken identity. Online video of the dramatic arrest showed the seasoned journalist being physically restrained by police officers and then being transported back to the current police station. Gaitho's abduction brings to a total of 8 prominent Kenyans to have recently been forcefully taken by law enforcers, including Gabriel Ogoda, Kevin alias Osama Otero, Billy Simani alias Crazy Nairobian, Kasamuel Mkaure, Joshua Okayo, Shad Kiprono, and Alfred Katerum. According to Gaitho, the unusual and unidentified visitors caused him to seek refuge at current police station. A police station has for long been regarded as a safe haven for Kenyans should one suspect dangerous activities against them. But why would people in civilian arrest someone in a police station in broad daylight? Where was the station OCS? Did they have a warrant before arresting or abducting Gaitho? During his inaugural X-Space conversation with the youth, President William Ruto promised that action will be taken against police officers who will be implicated in abduction of Kenyans during anti-government protests. Section 259 of the Penal Code provides that any person who kidnaps or abducts any person with intent to cause that person to be secretly and wrongfully confined is guilty of a felony and is liable to imprisonment for 7 years. Section 256 highlights that any person who by force compels or by any deceitful means induces any person to go from any place is said to abduct that person. The head of state said Kenya Kwanza government does not condone abductions. Neither does the constitution allow either abductions or enforced disappearances or even torture. Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
Sports News brought to you. Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb.
Alafu hiyo mwingine ni Hibaq ana sniff Simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
What point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni. In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business. It's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave. Wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring, switches, and smart home tech. Step 4. From paint choices to fixtures, it's all about aesthetics. Step 5. It's time to get the right furniture. Finally, the big day. Time to move in and create memories. Join us on the journey to making homes a reality on The Realtor, Tuesdays 6:30. Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni Hibaq ana sniff Simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
What point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries and turning dreams into reality.
Hata mbao ni pesa ya kusave. Wallahi. Mbao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of individuals who redefine possibilities. In a journey of resilience and determination, these individuals demonstrate that limitations are merely stepping stones to greatness.
I'm Nancy Njoroge, a mother of 3. I have 2 girls and a boy who is Clinton and who is autistic.
When my heart got healed, I decided to come out to be creating CP awareness, to let other people know that there is such a condition, and people that has it is not that they are witches.
Together, let's go beyond the limit every Saturday at 8 p.m.
Welcome to The Realtor, where we take you on an exciting journey from bare land to dream home. Step 1. Finding the perfect plot. We explore location, size, and potential. Next, construction begins. Witness the foundation being laid, walls rising, and rooms taking shape. Step 3. Electricity matters. We delve into wiring, switches, and smart home tech. Step 4. From paint choices to fixtures, it's all about
Welcome to the Daily Report. Welcome to the marketplace. Tonight, we're going to be auditing. We're going to be going through a couple of numbers. We want to know where the debt position of the country is in no certain terms. Of course, going to be going through some of the reports by the Office of the Auditor General and some of the reports by the Treasury and, of course, the Parliament. We're also going to be touching on some feedback that we got from Kenyans from different counties. What exactly do you think about the debt position of the country? Already in studio, I have 2, one would say heavyweight gentlemen. I have with me CPA Wycliffe Bichanga, who is a council member of ISPAC, and I have Engineer Shama Kiteme, who is the IEK president. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now, before we even go into the serious matters, Engineer Kiteme, I'll start with you. How do you think we're doing as a country, economically speaking? What are the numbers you think we're playing with when it comes to the national debt?
Well, basically we have the data in terms of economic growth and GDP. We know last year we did about 5.6%. We do know that every budget situation that we have a discussion around, and my colleague that will maybe handle that better than I,
Right.
part of it really is a debt.
Right.
Debt financing. Now, as a person,
As a Kenyan.
as a person, number one, there's a way I relate with debt.
Right.
It has its own implications to my financial situation, and it will affect the way I carry out myself. So when now you transfer that to the country, you realize that the debt situation needs to be a conversation for everyone,
Right.
at least every patriotic person.
Right.
And so the figures are flying left, right, center, and the conversation is going on. But what does that translate into?
Right.
And I'm sure that's why the conversation becomes interesting.
Yes.
And of course, I think that's why we are here.
Right. Engineer Kiteme, your name was forwarded in a, of course, presidential task force, which was suspended by the court. Of course, the president, I am assuming, was thinking of getting different players from different sectors to, audit the current situation, especially when it comes to public debt. When you got this news, what was your reaction?
Well, I need to begin by saying that my reaction that this was about engineers in Kenya, appreciating their place in our society, appreciating that they lead efforts in infrastructure. Design, conceptualization, implementation, contract management, and supervision.
Right.
So it was not really pretty much about I, as Engineer Sharma.
Right.
If the president of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya was called Hibaq Said,
Right.
that would have been the name gazetted. I do believe so. However, like all of us, we have a place in this conversation, and engineers particularly so, because we are key players in a big chunk of where this debt goes to, which is infrastructure financing.
Right.
And so, in a nutshell, for me, this is about engineers in this country and the critical role they play in the economy, much more than me as a person.
Of course, we will be delving into that much, much more. CPA Bichanga, welcome once again. Of course, I have to ask you this question. How do you think we're doing when it comes to our debt? We know that it is over 70%. Our public debt is over 70% of our gross domestic product. Are we handling our finances well as a country?
Thank you, Hibaq, and thank you for having me here. Yes, it's true. Our debt currently is it's about 73% of our GDP. In absolute numbers, I think that's about 11.1 trillion, which by all means is we're not doing well in terms of debt, because debt is good. People have grown, countries' economies have grown through debt, but you've got to be at a level that is sustainable, because I think the issue at the moment is sustainability. That is, our debt level really sustainable?
Right.
I think it's not. When you get to that level of 73%, when you look at the division between the foreign debt and domestic debt, I think we're about 53% foreign debt and about 46% being domestic. That also tells you that you're not doing well. That division, I think a few years ago, that division was close to 50%.
Right.
But again, it's a conversation that we've got to hold as a country. Of course, we know that we've seen some infrastructural developments happen in the past few years,
right.
and that gives you why we've had that big growth. But we've also seen situations where we've seen reports saying that some borrowings cannot be directly attributed to some development expenditure,
right.
as it should be.
Right.
When you also look through the years, I think way back in 2013, our debt level was below 2 trillion.
Right.
We now have that much. So when Kenyans come up and say we need to have this discussion, I think they're on the right path.
Right, gentlemen, let's just go through a few numbers here. What we know so far is that the public debt is definitely above the 10 trillion mark, and this was a mark that was given in order for us to sustain ourselves. Of course, now the government is trying to sustain it through percentages instead of having a debt ceiling, and the external debt and the external public debt is from multilateral, bilateral and commercial creditors, while domestic debt is from treasury bonds and bills. I'll throw this back to you, CPA Bichanga. You said that 53% of our debt is foreign and the rest is domestic. Of course, this is kind of, irregular. When you think about domestic debt, of course, it is higher when it comes to servicing. However, external debt does come with its own problems, especially when the currencies shift power. How exactly do you believe we should be handling this better?
Ideally, every time we go out of the country to borrow, it should be specific for development. I think that should be, that ought to be our guiding rule, and it is stipulated in our financial management practice. However, it doesn't happen. And so at times when you see we've borrowed externally, then you will want to see which are these development projects that we've actually gone out to borrow on.
Right.
It's not any better when you borrow domestically, because what has happened is that when you're very heavy as government borrowing domestically, you then sort of suffocate the business community in the country.
Right.
We've seen instances where businesses are not able to borrow from local banks because the local banks, they feel it's more attractive to lend to the government rather than lend to the public. So again, it is stifles growth of the economy. Right. So we've got to achieve a good balance where we're borrowing externally and domestically, but I think the real debate here is that should we be borrowing every year? Because when you look at the graph, you will see that the domestic debt has been going up year in, year out. And this is because every budget that has been presented has got a deficit, meaning we are forced to borrow on a year-to-year basis.
Right. We're living not within our means.
Absolutely. We're living beyond our means. And I think the conversation that now is in everybody's lips is how do we live within our means to avoid issues of borrowing, because you are borrowing to meet certain expenditures. That means you actually do not deserve those expenditures.
Right. Engineer Kiteme, you had a statement today that was somehow touching on some of these funds and how some of the issues and projects are usually debilitated when it comes to, when debts are not serviced and when counties do not get funds. Let's take a look at the third clip.
Hope that Parliament is going to be keen, because the issue of pending bills also affects counties, not only the national government. Our conviction is that if this issue is addressed, businesses will get the monies that they need to hire more engineers, to hire more staff, and this will create more job opportunities. As it is, and with the throwing of the finance bill, of course, we understand there is a national multi-stakeholder forum proposed so that we have a conversation around this subject and so that we have a broad national consensus on the way forward.
And thank God we have Engineer Kiteme with us here tonight. Maybe give us a little bit of insight on what you meant.
Absolutely. Very pertinent issue. Hibaq, let me tell you, this situation of pending bills has really hit our members. We have consulting firms closing shops, engineering consulting firms basically sending staff home. I have visited an entity that has sent 300 staff home. We have our colleagues who have gone 12 months unpaid. They are involved in projects. Government is not dispersing money to these projects. Projects are stalled. Now, my friend has just said that we should borrow for development. If we have been borrowing, have we really been borrowing for development?
Right.
Or something else? Our position as IEK is that the people in the streets, the conversation, however you twist it, it's about earning their daily bread.
Right.
And a big way of addressing this is releasing the money to the stall projects, addressing the whole issue of, pending bills,
right.
and the economy will have money to engage these people in the streets. That's our conviction.
Right.
And this is really a serious matter which we think needs to be addressed.
Right. CPA Bichanga, the Treasury, the former Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, had said that they're going to change some of the auditing tactics, especially when it comes to counties, from cash accrual accounting to accrual accounting. And this was supposed to be an end-all, be-all solution. He said there would be no pending bills. We will be able to manage our finances. How is that coming along? I do know that it was affected around July. So how are things happening there?
Yes, there is discussion around moving from cash-based accounting to accrual accounting. I'm aware that that has actually already taken effect, effective 1st July 2024, and there will be a transition period of 3 years where it's expected by end of 3 years we shall have fully perfected the issue of accrual accounting. So the difference here is that in accrual accounting, you are then able to recognize a payable. So you say, we've taken engineers' service today, we recognize it, because currently, whatever expenditure that we incur, as long as we've not paid it out, it will not be recorded in government books.
Right.
That's the difference. That you only recognize once cash has gone out. And so what happens is that you will just hold a pending bill. You write that there's a pending bill, but you've not recognized that expenditure. At the same time, you've only had it in a list that there's a pending bill here.
Right.
So what accrual accounting does is that the expenditure, for example, if engineer here was involved in construction of a certain building, so the building will be recognized in the books, it has come in. At the same time, we owe suppliers X amount.
Right.
So it is very clear that we have payables of X amount. And what that means, it becomes easier when now funds are actually allocated for that project, it becomes easier to settle the payables that have been waiting.
Right.
Because I think the biggest problem we have currently, and this is that bit where when you look at the discussion around pending bills, it doesn't make sense. It's there's usually a budget.
Right.
And the government process will tell you that before we confirm that there is enough budget, there's enough vote head, you do not proceed with the procurement process.
Right.
But we still have situations where you confirm there's enough vote head, proceed to procure, you incur service, you have an invoice, then payment doesn't come in.
Yep.
Right.
And that's that bit that doesn't make sense. But we know that what happens is that diversion of funds. So the budget line is this, but the money is spent on a different budget line.
Right.
And that is our headache as a country.
Right.
We really hope that the accrual-based accounting will change things, and I'm happy that the whole sectors, the whole agencies involved in the process have come together, including our very own ISPAC.
Right.
They've come together to just sensitize the public, sensitize the accountants working in those institutions on how to take up accrual-based accounting.
Right. Bichanga, what you've said has raised the heckles of Engineer Kitebe. Would you like to add on to that?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, the question is, we should have procurement plan published by the entities, by the agencies, by the MDS. Then we do know there is this procurement plan, and any project identified should be financed, and that is within the sensible public finance management principles.
Right.
How then does it come to happen that we have projects stalling. And let me tell you the cost implication of this. These projects that are stalled, there is idle equipment and labor. There is a contractual agreement in place.
Right.
Most likely suspended because of non-disbursement of finances. The implication of that to the economy is huge.
Right.
There are going to be claims. There are going to be, cases that are going to come out of this, and it is going to be painfully borne by citizens who pay taxes. Because when you have a contract situation and it is suspended for whatever reason, parties will incur loss, idle plant, labor and stuff like that, and they will claim. There will be determinations. We will end up into arbitrations and court cases. And there will be awards, and we have seen them in terms of billions.
Right.
So the multiplier effect of this public mismanagement of finances is huge. And we have been warning this. We've been warning the government about the multiplier effect of this kind of states of affairs.
Right.
Not only joblessness of people sent home and stuff like that, and suspended projects that we can see projects was abandoned, so the work's done, they start degenerating. But there will be claims and we'll pay expensively.
Right. You've spoken about putting these documents in the public domain so that there could be a little bit more of accountability. And speaking of accountability and ensuring Kenyans get to know what exactly is happening, let's take a look at what the citizens have to say about this topic.
Deni yenye iko kwa hii Kenya hata mimi nashangaa sana. Na nataka niulize President William Samoei Arap Ruto. Jana ulituambia, juzi hapa hivi karibuni ulituambia ya kwamba kuna kiwango ya deni ambayo ulilipa. Can you just be specific and tell us how much debt do we have and how much debt have we paid so far? Sababu hii mambo hii nchi yetu hii hata mtoto mmoja hajazaliwa akona deni. And we must know sababu gani nchi tutaelekea wapi? Mr. Ruto, please tell Kenyans. Tunataka kujua ni deni gani iko na ni ngapi tumelipa.
Kwa hii mambo ya public debt, mimi hufikiria serikali inafaa kutuambia the total debt yenye tuko nayo ikuwe public. Kitu ya pili, ituambie hiyo debt ilikuwa imechukuliwa lini na ilikuwa imechukuliwa wapi. Kitu ya tatu, ituambie hiyo debt ilifanya nini kwa ajili ya development ya hapa nchini. Kama for example itueleze, ituambie ni madarasa magani ilijenga barabara zipi, ilijenga reli zipi, tuweze kujua kama Kenya. Ya mwisho kabisa, hii public debt inafaa ifanywe audit mzuri sana. Tujue kama ikichukuliwa ilikuwa imefuata yale maafiki ambayo yamewekwa kikatiba ya kuhakikisha kuwa deni zikichukuliwa hapa. For example, nilipokuwa naangalia nilikuwa nimeona kwa 1.8 trillion zenye Ruto amechukua kama rais, 350 billion ndizo tu peke yake zimepitia kule katika bunge letu la kitaifa. Therefore, it is questionable about this public debt. Na tukiangalia kidogo 1.45 trillion zimechukuliwa bila approval ya representation. Sasa kama parliament ndio inaturepresent sisi kama wa Kenya, alafu mtuwekelee mseme sisi tuko na deni ambayo mlichukua bila ruhusa yetu, how do you expect Kenyans to continue suffering the debts without knowing what they did and how they were taken?
Hatujaiambiwa imeanza wapi, imefika wapi, so lazima hiyo kitu kwanza tuonyeshwe, ikuja kwa public participation ndio at least tujue mahali imefika. Lakini kuambiwa sasa tuko na trilioni 10 yenye hatujaiona, tujua mahali hizo pesa huwa zinatolewa, mahali zinafanya kazi, tena zingine zinaenda, wanakopa, wanarudi tena, hatujui mahali zinaenda. So tunastahili audit kama ifanywe mpaka dakika ya mwisho, na alafu hiyo audit iletwa kwa public participation, sababu tangu nizaliwe mpaka mahali nimefika saa hizi sisi bado tunaambiwa tuna deni, tunashindwa hii deni ni aina gani hii yenye haishi.
Hii deni ni aina gani haiishi? That's what Kenyans are saying. They want openness. They don't know where this debt is coming from, how it's being serviced. They don't have information that they should be having. They're saying we are the people who pay for these debts, but we don't know where it's coming from, where it's going to. We don't see the development projects. I was going through a few numbers, and according to the Parliament site, as of January 2023, our debt was at 9.182 trillion. That's according to the Parliamentary Budget Office. CPA Bichanga, you did say that right now we're at 11.1 trillion. You can see the difference, and that maybe if you could just give us an insight. Why are these numbers moving so fast? The Kenya Kwanza government was very adamant that we're not going to be borrowing more than we already were borrowing. What exactly is happening right now?
So the Kenya Kwanza government came into office, I think, in August 2022. Our debt was at 8.8 trillion. That tells you that we've borrowed close to slightly above 2 trillion since that time. As to why that is the case, it will be very easy that that we did not meet our budget expenditure. So our revenue did not hit our expectations. We had to borrow more. It's that simple. And Hibaq, this is exactly why people have been saying we now need to look at the expenditure.
Right.
I mean, we've seen what Kenyans have said about the finance bill, about collection of revenue. But I think the good discussion that now needs to follow is where are we spending our money? Where is the money going? We have seen, following the cancellation of the finance bill, we've seen the president say we're going to cancel, I think he did say the first lady's office, second lady's office, and no more, he did say no more confidential budget and all that. But I think we need to see a very well structured document which says the appropriation bill, which had already been passed, this is how we have revised it, so that we have a very clear feasibility of how much our expenditures come down. I think as a country, people are ready to fasten their belts. It makes a lot of sense this time round to say, you know what, our expectation for revenue is X amount. Let's match the expenditure. Whatever expenditure we will not be able to meet, then let it be. I think Kenyans are ready for that kind of discussion, because that's the only way to avoid borrowing over above what we've already borrowed.
Right, and of course one of the lamentations that has come up is that Kenyans are asking, where are the development projects that we should be seeing? 2-point-something trillion is quite the significant amount. We will be going on a very short break, but when we come back, we will be delving into some of these development projects. Do they exist? Where is the money going?
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback, ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
At what point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to the marketplace. Before we went on the break, we were talking about our situation public debt-wise, and we were asking where exactly is this money going? Engineer Kiteme, you are an engineer. Maybe could you or do you know of any significant development projects that have maybe taken place during the Kenya Kwanza regime?
Well, we know that Kenya Kwanza regime took over after the Jubilee government. We know that there was an accelerated investment, especially in infrastructure projects. We know the Mau Roads project. We have seen the expressway. We have seen initiatives, the Rironi to Mau Summit and all that. Those are very well documented. We have also seen either the same roads initially commissioned, recommissioned.
Right, right. Interesting.
So we want to see substantively. And if the current government just continued with what was existing, or we have new commitments and undertaking. And we have seen a lot of words and commitment to do this, internal container depot and all those kind of projects. And so perhaps, and what Kenyans are asking is, can we see this tangibly?
Right.
Because that is important. We are very much aware that investment in infrastructure is crucial for economic development. The moment you inject money into infrastructure, you spur some economic activity, people get jobs and all that. However, we kind of feel like we are trapped. We have to pay debt. Do we know where this debt went into? That is a key question everyone is asking. Because we can count only a few things. We have seen affordable housing, investment in affordable housing. And we know we have the levy and all that. But what other key and a big item can you talk about? Of course, we know there is an intention for SGR, continuation SGR and all that. But which other key big thing can you talk about, apart from affordable housing and all that? And that's a question in everyone's lip.
Right. There is the intention, and we all have good intentions, but there is the action, and Kenyans are asking where exactly is the action. CPA, maybe if I could just ask you, the government has said that around 60 shillings of every 100 shillings within our budget is usually used to service some of our debts and to repay some of our debts as well. Where is the other 40 shillings? Where is it exactly?
In the expenditure.
Right.
So the other 40 shillings is what will be used to incur both recurrent and development expenditure. That is the whole reasoning. That if, for example, we collected, like last year we collected, I think the year 2023, 2024, we collected about 2.4 trillion. So 60% of that was used to repay debt.
Right.
The difference, the other 40%, is what was used to spend for both our recurrent and development expenditure. Plus now the more the money we borrowed, because the 60% is of the revenue we collect from our taxes. So when you take that one further, you then realize that the issues that we spoke about on sustainability, that we cannot spend 60% of our revenue to repay debt.
Right.
But because we're already in that situation, what we need to do is then to avoid further debt. I think it is only logical that way.
Right.
But again, the conversation that we're having, and I like what engineer said, the conversation of asking, where did this money go in the first place?
Right.
So that we establish that, let's establish that the 60% is it really what you should be paying, or it should be lower?
Right.
So that kind of a discussion, I think, is timely.
Right. CPA, there were some notable figures who had said that Kenya doesn't even have a debt, and that whatever funds we are gaining are going into other, channels we don't know of the spaces. However, we must ask ourselves, now that we already know that we are very bad managers of our debts and of our finances, what can we do differently?
First, I wouldn't be part of those ones who say we do not even have debt, because until we have a credible report, until we have a credible information that for sure we do not have debt, I wouldn't want to say that. Because year in, year out, we've been in this country and we've seen a budget presented to us which is deficit, which has a deficit. And because the expenditure highlighted on those budgets has been incurred, then the money must have been sourced elsewhere, and most likely from debt. So I won't be fast to say that we do not have debt.
Right.
I will say we have debt. There may be inaccuracies in the recording, there may be exaggerations, but I think until we have a credible report on the same, I wouldn't be fast to say that.
Right. While the president was doing away with the finance bill, he did mention that a lot of development projects will be stalled. We do have a lot of austerity measures. Now, there's the trickle-down effect of this to even engineers who are handling these projects. There are some projects that are going to be dilapidated by the time we're done with this year. There are people who are going to be out of jobs. Maybe, Engineer Kitema, can you just tell us what exactly do we or will we be seeing in the next year?
Yeah, it's not an interesting scenario when you deprive development funds. When everything we have is really recurrent expenditure, it's not an interesting scenario. I'll paint a picture of the 90s. In the 90s, you could hardly identify a single project. You could count like 7 projects going on around the entire country. The effect of that to us as engineers and generally the infrastructure industry was huge. So much that engineers stopped practicing engineers to go and become accountants.
Right.
To go work with
this
KPMG.
Is a crossover episode, clearly.
To go work for KPMG and CN Young and all that, because there were no projects. And the impact is felt today. We have engineers who graduated in the 60s and all that, and by 90s, we were already registered and practicing. Then we have lost years, the 90s to about 2002. There were no projects. Engineers were not progressing and all that until after 2002, when now we revisited infrastructure of economic improvement. So the situation is dire. Our prayer is that we can unlock this as soon as we can, because when you're not doing projects, engineers are jobless. There is no way to earn their living, and either we lose them, and you're losing a number of them through brain drain.
Right.
Which you don't regret so long as they go to find opportunities where they go. However, we need the best brains in this country.
Right.
So unless really we unlock this issue of development financing, our industry is black. We do not want to imagine where we would be headed to,
Right.
as it were. Yeah.
Now, of course, there is the matter of, auditing some of these institutions and public agencies and even state departments. And the president did come up with a task force that, of course, now has issues with the courts. However, I must ask you, Bichanga, the Office of the Auditor General is the office that is supposed to be handling auditing. And the Law Society of Kenya did come out to say that there will be an overlapping of roles. What is your stance on this? Do you have faith in the OAG?
The Auditor General and most staff in that office are members of our institute.
Right.
I will be...
Try to be independent.
I must say that we have trust in that office, no doubt about it. But I think the conversation is the other way around, Hibaq. That how many of us as a country use the reports from the Auditor General? I think for the longest time, we've not been very good users of those reports. And actually, when you read Section 32 of the Public Audit Act 2015, you will see that it is a requirement by the Auditor General to publish the audit reports 14 days, I think, after giving them to Parliament, because the primary users of those reports are Parliament. So once the Auditor General is done, they issue the reports to Parliament, then publish them.
Right.
And they're all lying there in the OAG website. When you go there, there's a place, reports, you will have all the reports there. Also, Parliament, once they receive, they are required to also publish them on their website.
Right.
So the reports are there. And over the years, we've had conversations, we've seen issues coming up, recommendations given.
Right.
But most of the time, recommendations in this country are never followed.
Right.
So I will advise that, one, the public, especially now that we are having all these conversations, let's be accessing these reports. And whenever possible, let's now talk about the recommendations given. How do we continue to implement the recommendations that have been given?
Right. Now, we will be going on a break. However, before even that, we will be looking at the way forward. In the financial year 2022-2023, according to the Public Debt Management Office, we borrowed around 740 billion Kenyan shillings. And in the financial year 2024-2025, we aim to borrow more than even 1 trillion Kenyan shillings to service some of the government projects and to service expenditure as well. We'll be right back in a few.
Kila kiongozi ana hadithi yake ya kipekee.
Wazazi wangu walikuwa bit strict kwa sababu mamangu mwenyewe, mimi kutoka kuzaliwa sijailala nje.
The white small one, huyo ana sniff gunpowder na risasi na bomb. Alafu huyo mwingine ni ridgeback ana sniff simba.
Even the employees knows that. So when in the boardroom is the chairman, the CEO, and the rest of.
What point are you a wife?
The minute you get to that inside that door, you become now the wife.
Na kila maamuzi wanayoyafanya hufichua mengi kuhusu utu wao na uongozi wao.
We see God blessing us, and we now realize the power of giving also has to be rewarded back.
Kupitia kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, tunakuletea mahojiano ya kusisimua na uchambuzi wa kina kuhusu viongozi wetu.
Pick your core business as the bigger stones. Put them in your diary first. Give priority the bigger things.
Usikose kila Alhamis saa 1:30 jioni.
Before we went on the break, we were talking about where we're heading as a country. We're talking about our annual borrowing plan. And we did say that in the financial year 2022-2023, we borrowed around 740 billion. And in this financial year, we might borrow more than 1 trillion shillings. Bichang, I'll just, I'll rack your brains a little bit for this. More than 1 trillion shillings. That's almost a third, or even a quarter of what we have as our annual budget. How exactly is this going to impact us as a country?
You see, we keep on asking how come the debt is been going up.
Mm-hmm.
So what is going to happen is that the debt is going to increase.
Right.
And again, back to the question that are we living within our means?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to borrow more than 1 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we expect to collect about 2.6 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
So that is about 40% of what we're going to collect.
That makes us very irresponsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Whereas I still sympathize with the engineer here because he's also saying we need to spend on infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think prudence should be relooking at our recurrent expenditure.
Right. Engineer, I must rack your brains as well. Borrowing more than 1 trillion shillings, development projects seem to be very bleak in this country.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Yeah. I think all of us agree that we must now be more responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And I began this conversation by saying, personally, even when I'm indebted,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit of stress because
Right.
you have to pay and all that.
Mm-hmm.
As a country, we must think in the similar manner as if we were individuals. However, there are key fundamentals, factors of the economy that you can do.
Right.
And you do not collapse the economy in its entirety.
Mm-hmm.
We have advocated for a rethink on industrialization.
Mm-hmm.
Are we able to attract FDI?
Mm-hmm.
Are we able to make Kenya attractive to foreign investors so that then we grow the economy from the point of investments coming from outside the country?
Right.
Because we address the issue of taxation, issues of power, issues of making ease of doing business in Kenya attractive to people who are to do business again.
Right.
So that we now think of other ways of creatively making sure the economy continues to thrive.
Which is the same.
So that then our dependence is not entirely on debt financing to pump money into the economy to carry out infrastructure. So we must now start being more creative.
Right.
Because we do believe, and this year we have a convention, our conversation is actually on industrialization for economic transformation and employment creation.
Right.
Because we need now to think of just not being a consumptive or consuming economy, but a more producing economy, a more productive economy. Because look, when you have a productive economy, then the service industry, it comes in to serve the productive economy. Agro-processing, manufacturing, and all those kind of things. So that then we do not just run into borrowing to finance our recurrent expansion of that. We are looking at expanding the economy.
Right. Engineer Kiteme, the court will be issuing a further directive by 23rd July on the Forensic Audit and Public Debt Task Force by the President. Say, for example, and we're talking about hypothetics right now, say, for example, this task force does come into play. What changes do you believe can be seen?
I think everyone, and we have heard Kenyans in the streets saying they really want to understand this thing. The work of the court, of course, the decision will be made, and whichever way it is made, we will have to move on.
Right.
If the thing is determined in a manner that a rethink needs to be done, still we need to rethink so that we know we empower the office of OIG, or whichever way, so that then we have we have a way of really establishing where we are, because that's a cry of everyone in the streets, and you hear it.
Right, and
you hear it, people saying, okay, do we even know where we are? So that then we start crawling. We crawl and then we walk.
Right.
That's the big question everyone is asking.
Now that you've talked about word on the street, let's touch base once again on the ground.
Hiyo deni yote ikiekwa public ama ikifanyiwa scrutiny, kama pesa haijatumika na kama hatuwezi weza kujua zile barabara zilitengenezwa, hao watu walikuwa involved in those targeted areas ili hiyo loan ikuwe approved, wanafaa waendewe juu. Hiyo inaweza kuta ni pesa ambazo tunalipa kama wananchi, lakini ni pesa zimenufaisha watu kadhaa peke yake. Therefore, me support that debt zote more so the zenye tumechukua internationally, sio domestic, they should be auditable and they should be put to public scrutiny, tuweze kujua tunalipa kwa nini, tunalipa kwa nani na tunalipa kwa sababu gani.
Tangu nizaliwe nisikie tu deni iko Kenya. Na sijui deni ilipo hadi wa leo. Sio nashindwa ni deni itaiisha ama bali itazidi kuendelea. Hapo ndio nakuwa na swali. Hata mtoto wangu ambaye hata sina mtoto sasa hivi sijui kama atalipa deni hiyo. Hiyo ndio swali niko nayo mpaka sasa hivi. Hii deni inakuwa tu deni kila siku. Miaka nenda miaka rudi. Ni deni ambaye Kenya na wao inadaiwa. Sijui kama tunaweza uza part of Kenya. Ndio hii deni ambaye ilipo iishe. Hii shida ambayo iko Kenya iishe.
Wycliffe, those are very interesting sentiments from Kenyans. Maybe if you could just tell us, what do you think about what they just said? One of them said that we need it to be public, and you know right now the current culture is watu wanasalimiwa. So maybe if it's put in the public, there will be some, public justice, and some of the people who are corrupt will be brought to book. What do you think about what the Kenyans just said?
My thinking is that currently all the discussions that have been going on, they are very timely. Kenyans are almost saying enough is enough. I think that's what I get from what the gentlemen have just said. That, for example, the gentleman you said, hata watoto wake wanalipa, and yet he doesn't have a mtoto. So that clearly tells you that we feel that this debt will be paid by generations to come. We will live here, we'll continue increasing the debt, and the generation to come will get even a bigger load. And that is the discussion. My thinking is that when we now start being very keen and saying, you know what, let's see, how did we get here? So that we avoid even loading the load. Because at the moment, the fear is that today we could be in 10, 11 trillion. In a few years, we will be talking of figures that are even beyond our own GDP,
right,
from the look of things. And yet we may not be able to see how that has spurred production in the country. And I love what engineer said, that we need to encourage production in the country. We need to produce more.
Right.
So if whatever we are borrowing is not helping us spur production, then we are losing it.
Right.
As an economy, we must think of what are these things that we need to do to increase production in the country, so that at the end of the day, in terms of, and I think when we start having discussions of our debt as a percentage of the GDP, the reasoning is that, let's see, in terms of percentages, are we also producing more?
Right.
So when you look at the numbers, the percentages, you realize that we've been going up, meaning our production is not going up.
Right.
What is going up is the debt. Because I think we've grown from 59%, 68% in 2022, then now here we are at 73%.
Right.
So that tells you that our production is stagnant, but our debt appetite is going up. Clearly, whatever measures we are doing is not, they are not encouraging us to produce, and I think that is the cry.
Kenya as a person is very irresponsible financially. If we carry this on our shoulders jointly. Engineer Kiteme, the person who was speaking, one of the Kenyans, was saying that they're worried for their children and they don't even have children. What are your views on what he just said?
That guy is spot on. And why he is spot on? We have seen countries in deep problems. I think I will mention, I think we've seen Zambia having to go for a kind of restructuring. We have seen Ghana, I think so. We have seen Sri Lanka in serious problems. When you now start thinking in those lines, then you know we do not have an option but to embrace more physical discipline. And we know sometimes you can sacrifice for the time being for the better tomorrow. And everyone in the street is almost saying like that. Oh, we can drop this thing, we can drop this, we can drop this, we can drop this. Because there's a consensus, a national consensus that where we are headed is trouble. Thankfully, and I listened to His Excellency President talk about when he was dissolving the cabinet. Towards the end of the speech, he said he is going to reconstitute a team that will still help him in some of these issues.
Right.
So I believe it looks like that awareness is still there. But we are not far from the Ghana situation,
Right.
the Zambia situation. And I don't want to imagine of other countries like Zimbabwe or even Argentina. Please, this is the only country we have, and we just need to make sure we don't go over the cliff.
Right.
Yeah.
Engineer, you have hope, which is fantastic. But Wycliffe, you did say that some of the recommendations that even the OAG usually gives are not taken very seriously. And this shows that we're not very ready to tighten our belts and to turn around our financial situation. Maybe tell us about that.
I will give you one example of a recommendation that I got when I looked through the Auditor General's reports. One recommendation was talking about paying commitment fees, that at times we borrow money, but the projects take time to take effect. And in the process, we pay commitment fees for those borrowed monies that we've not utilized.
Right.
And the Auditor General was saying, can we have our act together so that by the time we are negotiating the borrowing, we already have the project ready to go, so that we do not pay commitment fees on money that we've not drawn. That's just one example of those recommendations that have been given over the years, but for some reason, it's not taken shape. Now, engineer says is optimistic, which we support.
Right.
Our thinking is that now the president has seen the light.
Right.
That some of these recommendations will now be taken more seriously to just avoid these situations where we're incurring costs of money that you do not even have.
Right. Gentlemen, we are wrapping up, so I'll give you a minute each to give a concluding statement. However, I do have one of those recommendations here where the OAG had said that the government has paid billions in taking debts it plans not to spend, and loans acquired before projects are ready for takeoff show a lack of preparation that is costing taxpayers. I'll start with you, Engineer Kiteme. What would you like to tell the nation?
So, in project management, we say, plan, plan, and plan. Don't hit the ground running before you have planned and planned and planned. Look, before we even talk about acquiring this debt, let's involve experts in infrastructure to advise reasonably. Because some of the problems we have is a project has been conceived, we have rushed to please the populace or whatever for political purposes, we hit the ground running, then that project starts going through what we call variations.
Right.
You had a project like we saw in the parliament, this Bunge building, conceived for 6 billion, ends up 9 billion, or whatever figure. Huge, huge, huge variations. Why? Because you did not plan. And we have seen also multilateral or bilateral agreements agreed upon that are so painful to us. So we are proposing involve experts in infrastructure, engineers, in these conversations. And then stop also sending out EUI and say, we want to do this project, but it is restricted to nationals of China, Chinese nationals. And we are seeing this, so it is not right. Let us involve engineers, locals, who are experts in this kind of economy, in this kind of multilateral and bilateral agreements, so that we develop this country together.
Right, and speaking of professionals, our CPA here, what are your concluding statements?
I'll also take the same call on professionals. I think there are two independent offices in this country that for the longest time have been taken for granted.
Right.
We are talking of the Office of the Auditor General. We're also talking of the Office of the Control of Budget. The recommendations from those two offices, because the Control of Budget tells us about budget implementation. We've seen reports saying that the budget consumption have been quite low, especially on development, and we seem to be okay.
Right.
So I want to encourage our viewers that let's take it upon ourselves to actually know what reports are coming from these offices, what recommendations are coming out of these offices, because we pay those officers to do this to us. And when they give us reports, we need to be able to consume them. But then to the government, very, very important to implement those recommendations.
Right.
The recommendations are not supposed to make the reports beautiful. The recommendations are actually supposed to be implemented. That is why those offices were conceived in our constitution.
Right. Clearly you're saying those reports are not just for vibes. They should be doing something in public offices. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular conversation. When it comes to managing the public debt, we're clearly not doing very well, but maybe we will be doing better in future. Have yourselves a very lovely night. My name is Hibaq Said. Adios.